Hi everybody. In this video I'd like to get everybody started on using LaTeX. And so what you need is what's called a LaTeX editor. And I think the easiest way to get started is to use a free online LaTeX editor. There are standalone programs that you can use for editing LaTeX, but I think when you're just getting started, the best way to do it is to just go to one of these free online LaTeX editors. The one that I use is Overleaf. It's pretty good. This is not an advertisement for Overleaf, but what I am saying is that my experience with this program is that it is really good. You can set up a free account. It is at overleaf.com. What I'd like to suggest over the course of this video is that you play along, so it might be worth pausing right now, go to Overleaf and sign up for an account. When you sign up for the account and sign in, you should see something that looks like this. It is a really good program. Allows you to create documents and save them there. It also allows you to work together with other people. So if there's something that's going on in my class and you're struggling with it, you can send me a link to your file and I can take a look at the code and help you out with that. So if you haven't already done so, pause, set up an account, and get to this page. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new project, and so they give a lot of possible templates. Just for the beginning here, I'm just going to start with this basic template, and then what we get is a LaTeX editor, and all LaTeX editors basically look like this. On this one, on the left side here, this is where I'm going to put all of the code. And on the right side, this is where my document is going to be. And so if we just look at what we see over here on the right side, here's all of this stuff that comes before begin document is what LaTeX calls the preamble. And so the preamble is what sets up information about it. So for example, this is a document class article. Great. There are several different kinds of document classes. The ones that we will use most often is for an article. And then this is just stuff that is just kind of a basic preamble. Like to be honest with you, this thing right here, I don't even know what that does. I just make sure that it is always there. The stuff that we do to create the document will always go in between these two lines, begin document and end document. Anything that I put before that or after that is not going to end up being in the document. And so you can see that right here in parentheses in this template, it says type your content here, and that's exactly what showed up in the document over on the right. So I could delete this, and maybe I just go, words go here, right? And then it's uploading, like you can see this, it's compiling, and so then it shows me that words go here, right? So what I've typed here is over here. There's a period there, and the period is not here. It looks like it's still updating, and then the period ends up going there. Now, a couple things that are a little bit different than what you are used to in using Microsoft Word or Google Docs is that those programs, the way that you create the document is exactly the way that the document looks. This is not like that, because this over here on the left is the way that I'm creating the document, and that is not the way that the document looks. And so let me give you a perfect example. Over here on the left, I'm going to do a carriage return, and then I'm going to put more words here. And then it is going to compile. And when it comes over here, you see that what it ended up compiling is not the same thing that I have over here. What I expected to have happen was that there would be a return, and the more words go here would end up on the next line. Okay, so in my programming, I have to tell LaTeX to create a new line. The way that you tell LaTeX to create a new line is to use 2 backslashes. So 2 backslashes always tells LaTeX, oh, I've got to use a new line, and sure enough, it created that on a new line. It also assumed that this first part was the beginning of a paragraph, so it indented it. That's why it moved over. There are ways to make it so that it doesn't indent it. So then that's just, so the way that you type text is exactly the way that you would type text in Word, but you have to actually physically put in returns so that it moves down to the next line. All right, so I'm going to put in another return, and then what we're going to start looking at is what happens when we start typing math. So this, I'll write this is an inline fraction. So I'm going to put a fraction inside of a sentence, and we see that all the time in text. And so the way that math always goes into LaTeX, I have to tell it that math is coming. And when we want to do inline equations, math is always surrounded by two dollar signs. And so on the inside now, I am going to put what that text is going to be. And it's worth noting here that all of a sudden this turned pink, and over here it's saying, hey, we have an error. That's just because I typed these two dollar signs and I haven't typed anything in the middle. So we don't worry about those kinds of things yet. A lot of the LaTeX commands begin with a backslash. So this is one backslash. And then I know from my experience in LaTeX that if I want to type a fraction, I type in FRAC. Now, using overleaf, overleaf tries to predict what it is that you're looking for. All I've typed in is FR, and it says, hey, you want to type a fraction. And so if I select that, it gives me these two curly brackets. The first one is going to be the numerator. The second one is going to be the denominator. So I'll type in 1, scroll over, type 2, go outside, put a period, and then when it compiles, I'm going to get that inline fraction 1/2. Right? So that's the way that we type an inline fraction. If you can also nest these commands, so maybe we want to type a compound fraction. So how about this is a compound fraction. So $2 signs, then frac. Now in the numerator, I want another fraction. So I put in another fraction, and maybe it's going to be 1/3, and then I move over here, and so now I'm outside of that inner fraction, and then maybe there's a +7, and then if I move over again, now I'm in the denominator of the big fraction, and maybe that's another fraction, 3 divided by 4. And so we'll wait for that to compile. And sure enough, now I have this compound fraction. Okay, so again, my experience with LaTeX tells me that this command frac is kind of nice, but when it's inside of a sentence, but sometimes I want my fractions to be a little bit bigger. And so you can do that. Like you'll notice that the font size on these fractions is smaller than the font size that is in the sentence. So there's another command. I'll say this is a bigger fraction. And that one is dfrac. Right? So D in LaTeX, a lot of times when they put a D in front, it's for display. Like this is like we're going to display this. And so if I do a display fraction, 1 divided by 2. So I finished that, and then something's going to happen. We'll wait for it to happen. It's compiling. Okay, so now I have an error, right? So I typed this in, I completed the whole thing, and it's saying, basically it's saying, I don't know what dfrac is. And that's because I have not preloaded a package that allows for dfrac. So when I go up here to the preamble, like I said, this is the thing that sets up the way that the document is going to look. And so there is a use package. So I start with use, and it gives me the, it did the predictive text thing. So anytime that I want to use the dfrac command, I have to put in the package. And I'm going to delete the square brackets, and again, this is just because I've done this before and I know that. And the package that I need is called AMS Math. And if I put that in there, then basically what it's doing, and any of you that have done computer programming before know that in programs, sometimes you have to load a package so that your program can use it. This is the exact same thing. Every single one of my documents uses that package, along with several other packages that we will learn about as we move along. So I add that package, and now it knows what dfrac is, and then it gives me this bigger fraction that you can see. Basically, the numerator and denominator have the same font size as what was going on in that sentence, right? So that's just kind of a nice thing. And again, you don't need to remember all of this stuff because I'm going to help you through it. This is just us kind of laying the groundwork for how things go. All right, there are also centered equations. Centered, maybe I've got a square root. All right, so I should spell that right. Square root. So this is a centered square root. So dollar signs create an inline equation. A centered equation goes down to the next line and centers it on the page. And so instead of using $signs, I use backslash bracket and then a backslash in the other bracket. So the two brackets and whatever's on the inside is going to be centered on the next line. So again, I know that the way that you type a square root is to use SQRT. The predictive text part has got this square brackets in there. That's for if you want to create a like third root or something like that. I'm going to do a square root, which by default I take out those square brackets, and then maybe it's an x plus 3. And then you can see in my document that it has moved down a line and it has centered that. Again, just to point out what those square brackets were, if I put in those square brackets and put a 3 in there, then it is going to load, it's loading now, it's going to load a cube root, right? So then that's it. If you leave it out, by default, it ends up being a square root. So then, you know, this, again, it creates really, really nice ways of doing things. So how about this is the difference quotient. The difference quotient, I will center it because it's worth being centered. The difference quotient is a fraction, so dfrac. In the numerator, I need f of x plus h minus f of x, and then in the denominator, I need h. And so once it finishes compiling, you can see that I have a really nice, once it finishes compiling, you can see that I have a really nice centered format of the difference quotient. Getting help in LaTeX is actually pretty easy. This is something that I end up doing a lot. So like, let's say, for example, that I wanted to type a fraction and put parentheses around the fraction. So I'll just put $signs and a d, then I want in parentheses a dfrac of 1/2. And when it compiles, I'm going to see that I get that fraction 1/2, but the parentheses are too small, right? I want the parentheses to cover that entire fraction. So getting help in LaTeX is really, really easy. So if I'm just going to open up a new tab and I'm going to Google, okay? All of mine ends up being, I always Google the word LaTeX first and then whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And so sure enough, there it is. I did this right before, so it knew that this was something that I might want to do. So parentheses around a fraction. And so we get all of these things you are familiar with. I am always a huge fan of the Stack Exchange. So it's always got great answers on Stack Exchange. So whenever I do a Google search on LaTeX stuff, or any programming stuff, I always go after the Stack Exchange versions first. And so let's just take a look at this one. And so Stack Exchange is a place where people ask and answer questions. And so then this person has said, you know, I'm asking this question and I'm trying to see what's going on. And one of the things I love about the Stack Exchange is that a lot of times you can see code and then what the result of the code is. And like you look at that and that's a bit overwhelming. We come down here and then this is the way that the person has answered it, right? And so then they've got this big thing here, right? So this is what the question was asking and they made it look like this. I don't need to understand all this, but I need that part right there, right? I can see that they took this big old thing and obviously those parentheses are the size that they need to be. So let's go up into the code and see if we can figure out where that was. So begin and end equation. You're going to see a lot of begins and ends in LaTeX. So something's going on in the middle there. And I can see that this part is sum, and then there's the equal sign. Well, that is a sum, and there's the equal sign. So whatever comes after this equal sign must be the thing that I'm after. And sure enough, there it is right there. It's got backslash, left, open parentheses. And if I go over here, I see that there's backslash, right, close the parentheses. So now I've got a pretty good guess as to how to go about fixing my document. So let me come back over here, and then instead of just using the parentheses, it looks like if I put backslash left and then come over here and do backslash right, then let's see what happens. Sure enough, go, there it is, we get that. So I've been using LaTeX for years and I consider myself to be really good at it, and almost every time that I'm trying to do something that's slightly new, I always have to like Google it to get an idea from somebody else as to how it is that they did it. In this video, I'm not expecting that you totally now know how to do it and you're on your way to doing in LaTeX, but this is just kind of the types of things that we end up needing to do. Whenever I need you to do something in LaTeX, I am always going to provide you with a whole lot of information to help you get started.